So today I'm going to be talking about my discourse community, which is speech language pathology. Let me just see if I can make it bigger. There we go. So my presentation is on the ethos, logos, and pathos in the speech language pathology or SLP discourse community. So here's my table of contents. I'm going to be talking about what is the SLP community, my article and video source, rhetorical elements used in those sources, my thesis statement, how each source is used, the difference between my two sources, and my conclusion. So what is the SLP discourse community? Speech language pathology is the umbrella term used for communication sciences and disorders, which is my major. Speech language pathology fits it better as it is more of a widely known term, and that's essentially what I want to go into, is to be an SLP. There are many kinds of communities within the SLP discourse. For example, some professionals work with children, while some others specialize with adults. I personally want to work with children. And then some people only work with patients who have a certain type of disorder or some who are hard of hearing. SLPs use a lot of different writing styles as well, especially hands-on in their field. They will use like paperwork, diagnostic work, case notes, and progress reports of their patients. So I used Ethos like logos and pathos for my rhetorical appeals in my thesis statement. So for some background information, Ethos is the credibility that an author has. The main goal here is to get their audience to trust them. Techniques used for this appeal include branding, using a credible source, and having confidence in what you're talking about. Logos is essentially logic and reasoning. The author's argument, if there is one, is based on facts and reasoning, and it's not typically subjective or biased. The goal is to get their audience to really think about what they're trying to prove. Pathos is the emotional response to a subject. An author's goal here is to get their audience to feel like any sort of emotion. Often an author will use imagery or emotion to provoke this. So my thesis statement. Both Riley's clinical forum article about EPP and speech pathology and Perry's video about speech pathology rely heavily on ethos, logos, and a little bit of pathos to continue the argument that this SLP discourse community is widely unknown and up and coming with the use of technology. Despite the different forms of text, both pieces highlight the importance of speech language pathology and want to also highlight the challenges faced in the field, hence wanting to spread more light on the field itself. So this is how Ethos was used. Both of my sources display Ethos in their work to gain a sense of trust and credibility with their different audiences. So YouTuber Emily Perry, who is a certified SLP, this can be proved by looking at her YouTube bio on her channel. In this bio description, it says that she graduated with an MS in 2016, and she also has her certificate of clinical competence. Shana Riley, who is the author of the article, is also a certified SLP, who is also the pro vice chancellor of the health group at Griffith University. This can be found, it's public knowledge on the internet. She is also considered a distinguished professor at this university. While there is some background information on the authors, their works display ethos by examining the field of speech language pathology through a factual lens. For example, Perry starts off her video by welcoming the audience to what she calls Speech Fact Friday, which is where she will give facts about a certain topic in the SLP community and she'll further go into detail about it and explain it to her audience. Another example is how Riley introduces her topic by saying the aim of this paper is to, which allows the audience to understand what she's going to explain and how she's going to do it. And then this is how logos was used. Both sources display the use of logos in their work to reason and give a logical speech to continue the foundation of credibility within their work. Perry uses logos when she first introduces what an SLP actually does. She starts off by listing different aspects of speech language pathology, like dysphagia, articulation, motor speech, etc. She then says, there are so many things that an SLP does, and the title that we have does not encompass all of those things. Riley uses logos in her article through the use of chronological order in her key points of her argument. While Perry does not have a solid argument that she is trying to prove, Riley is using her argumentative points to persuade her audience. For example, first, EPB is defined and discussed. For context, she's trying to persuade her audience to review the challenges of making speech language pathology an evidence-based practice. Something else I found interesting was how Perry uses her own experiences and her own examples in her work to gain credibility with her audience as well. While her what she uses is also biased and a little bit subjective because she is a practicing SLP currently in modern day. I feel like her using her own life experiences in the field gains credibility. And this is how pathos was used. There wasn't a lot of pathos that I could find within each text, but this is what I found. Both sources display the use of pathos in their work to provoke a response with their respective audiences. The purpose of pathos is to provoke an emotion. Perry uses pathos in her video by appearing sympathetic to her patients that she is talking about. In her video, she explains many examples of how she helps her patients to get better and better their way of life. Riley does not use many examples of pathos in her article, as she is not trying to provoke a response in her audience like Perry is. She's moreover trying to explain her thoughts with evidence and reasoning. Perry also relates to her audience as she is filming in her home in her work clothes, which allows the audience to empathize with her. This would be an example of imagery. Something else I noticed is how Perry's channel is not all about speech language pathology. She's also making videos on motherhood, as she is also a young mother of two. This is an interesting way to relate to her audience, as she shares a bit more about her personal life and not just her field of work. How these sources are different. While these sources can be compared due to their shared discourse, they're also different. For example, I used a video source and an article source. So the video was spoken and the article was written. And also there are two different audiences here. Riley's audience is more of professionals that professionals are going to read her paper because it is a professional work and it is a scholarly article. Therefore, professionals and professors are going to use her article, whereas Perry's video is more for people who are just interested in SLP and who want to know more about the topic. Perry's video also gives a very basic overview of an SLP. It's more of like an elementary type of video, while Riley's article is considered scholarly and professional as it was in a textbook about speech language pathology. Continued. Perry's video gives personal examples, while Riley's article is very factual and doesn't touch on anything personal. Perry is also giving a rundown of information, while Riley is more of a trying to prove a point of the challenges of evidence-based practice in the SLP community. These two sources were written over 10 years apart. The article was written in 2009, while the video was published in 2019. So there is a modern time difference here. Back in 2009, I don't even think YouTube was a thing. Therefore, articles and written papers were what many people relied on to get information. And now in modern day times, everyone can go to YouTube to look up anything. So Perry's video is definitely more accessible than Riley's article would be. In conclusion, both of these texts use rhetorical appeals of ethos, logos, and pathos, and despite their differences, they share the same discourse of speech language pathology, which is how we can compare the two of them together.